So I'm sure that by now many of you have seen a video done by someone named Justin Dennis, or Riley Dennis, as the thing wishes to be known as now, as well as some responses that some people have done. Well, this one here is my response to the video.
Would you date someone who's trans? Would you date someone who's black? Would you date someone who's fat? Would you date someone who's disabled?
Okay, so let's evaluate what exactly dating means, because I think what I consider the term to mean is definitely different than what the Dennis is referring to dating. I see it as an experiment, a test, learning how to ride a bike with training wheels on, going into a pool with one of those inflatable ducky things that goes around your waist. That's kind of like what dating is before you actually take the plunge into marriage. So people are going to have certain expectations when it comes to the dating scene. Now, as you go through this video, you're going to see that the dentist kind of blurs that line with just an overall sexual attraction. So let's go over this list of stupidity once again and analyze it from there.
Would you date someone who's trans?
I hate to sound lazy and a bit wishy-washy when it comes to definitions, but trans is another thing that, at least from what I've heard from a lot of SJWs, has a lot of different meanings to a lot of different people. So I'm going to get back to this one after we go through the easier questions, okay?
Would you date someone who's black?
I'd be willing to date someone who was black if I felt that she and I could be a compatible pair.
Would you date someone who's fat?
Funny thing about this entire stupid concept is I have only had two people that I have dated that I consider to be dating. And by a lot of people's standards, they were both fat. I just consider them both to have been kind of on the thick side, but yeah, so yes, I would.
Would you date someone who's disabled?
Kind of like with the previous question involving the blacks, that would depend on if I felt like that they were compatible. And since we're talking about disabled, that would also depend on the type of disability that we're referring to. You can't just lump them all together and expect the same result no matter what. I mean, you're kind of being narrow-minded there.
Would you date someone who's trans?
So like I said, I came back to the subject of trans afterwards because it's unfortunately something that has many definitions to different people. Kind of like the disabled thing, only even more so. The way that I define it is based off of how the term originally started. I know a lot of SJWs include a whole shit ton of different things with the definition of being trans. I'm telling you, trans means transsexual, which means it's somebody going from one sex to the other. They are making a transition from one set of genitalia to the next. Male to female, female to male. That's it. All the other stuff that some SJWs like to throw in there is not trans. Stop pretending that it is. So, the dentist, you look like you're transitioning from male to female, so I'm assuming that's what's going on with you. I would not date a trans that fits under that category, because from a biological sense, they are always male. I will never be able to procreate with something like that and produce children. To me, that's the point of it all. Now, if we're talking female to male, that's kind of an iffy. It depends largely on how far along the transition process they've gone. Because if there's enough time, I could possibly convince them not to do it. I mean, I wouldn't be like, please don't do it, please don't do it. I mean, that's kind of rude as far as I'm concerned. But if they've gone far enough in the procedure, I see nothing to gain from it as someone who's looking for a lifelong partner. And that's what dating is to me, is finding a lifelong partner. So odds are I wouldn't date a trans person just because of how it's defined and how many different stages there are and whatnot. So that one I would probably say no to. But let's keep on going with what the dentist is saying with this video.
Now, honestly, I don't know what your answer is to those questions, but I've met a surprising number of people who would say no to all or at least some of them.
Why is that surprising to you? You know, I mean, people have tastes, people have preferences, you know. It's not really that surprising that some people would not want to date somebody on these categories or would focus specifically on a certain something. I mean, That's kind of how sexual interest works, doesn't it? I mean, are you going to tell gay people that being drawn to people of the same gender is not correct? I mean, I don't really see where you're going with this.
Argument is
I think you mean their reason, not their argument, their reason.
Their argument is that it's just a preference and that you can't control who you're attracted to.
Oh my god, I can't believe you're actually making an argument against the very thing that the LGBTQ community has been saying for decades. It's not a choice, it's a preference. That's what you guys have been saying for years upon years. I don't even think you were alive when this community started making that claim. Seriously, do you not hear yourself? Okay, let's go ahead and apply your stupid bullshit logic. Would you date a dog? Huh? No? You wouldn't date Fluffy? Or Cujo here? Huh? No? Oh, do you hate dogs? Oh, you're a bad person because you hate dogs. You won't date a dog. Well, how about a 1972 AMC Gremlin? Yeah, there you go. There's a ugly of a beauty. No, oh, you won't date a car? Oh, you must hate automobiles. Oh, you're such a bigot. Okay. Here's something that you're probably gonna love. How about your mom? Would you date your mom? Come on, your mom loves you. Don't you love your mom back? Huh? No, you're not gonna date your mom. Wow, you're an asshole. You don't even love your own mom. Wow, you're such a horrible human being.
I think most of the time that this is brought up, it's in regards to race.
Or being, I don't know, gay.
Would you date a trans person, honestly? Think about it for a second. Okay, got your answer? Well, if you said no, I'm sorry, but that's pretty discriminatory.
Hey, Ellen Page, guess what? If you have no preference for me, a straight man, then you're a horrible person, according to the dentist. You see, even if I were going to date someone who is trans, no matter what definition of trans we're talking about, no matter how far along they are or whatnot, I would not date you, the dentist. So, honestly, I do think that that's what this entire video is about. You probably got your feelings hurt, and now you're just wanting to rant and bitch.
Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you're a horrible person who hates trans people.
Somehow, I find that hard to believe.
There was probably a time in my life when I said I wouldn't date a trans person, but since then, I've thought critically about it and changed my mind.
As have I, and I've come to a completely different conclusion because you and I are two completely different people.
I could sit here and show you photos of conventionally attractive trans people. There are definitely trans people who you would never know are trans unless they told you, because they pass for cis. And that might convince some of you.
Yeah, I can do that too. What's your point? Here, I'll even show you. And of course, who can forget about the amazing YouTuber known as Blair White?
But I think arguing that you would only like a trans person if you didn't know they were trans is a poor argument.
Okay, so for the interest of time, I'm not going to go over everything else that the dentist says throughout the video regarding dating trans people because it's complete garbage at this point. They're just making the argument of if you're attracted to them, then you have to date them and fuck them because that just makes sense and it means you're not going to hurt feelings. Well, my exact arguments, especially with the few seconds that was just played, just because I find someone attractive doesn't mean I'm going to fuck them. I mean, I have two sisters I consider to be attractive. Doesn't mean I'm going to fuck either one of them. That's just gross. For an obvious reason. They're my fucking sisters. I wouldn't do that to them. And besides, one of them's married, so on top of that, we'd be guilty of adultery. Blair White is attractive. I might consider having a one-night stand with her if given the opportunity. Might. You know, and if I do, it's not for the sake of I want to be with her. It would be for either for the sake of just to experiment and also just to say, hey, I fucked somebody famous on YouTube. Yay! But I wouldn't date her because she doesn't have one of the key aspects of what I'm looking for when it comes to dating somebody. Remember, I said that I'm dating in order to find a potential lifelong partner. That's what dating means to me. And knowing that Blair White cannot give me one of the things that I'm looking for automatically disqualifies her. So, you know, I wouldn't give a shit if she can't cook or didn't want to clean because of work or laziness or whatever, I can understand that. I mean, if it's laziness, I'd be a little bit miffed. But not being able to produce a child, that's very important to me. So, yeah, I wouldn't date a trans for that reason.
Saying that you're not attracted to fat people isn't innate.
Yes, it is.
It's informed by a society that tells you that being thin is ideal. Everything in the media you consume is bombarding you with messages that skinny is beautiful and fat is ugly.
That is one big pile of shit.
No, the Dennis. No, it's not influenced by what we consume in the media. Okay, that's absolutely stupid. You know that is a lie. There's no truth at all in what you just said. I mean, if it were true, nobody in America would be gay. Okay? For many decades, our media has kept the concept of homosexuality out of it. But yet it kept on existing. It kept on thriving. And you know why? Because media has absolutely no relevance when it comes to whether or not you're gay. Or whether or not you like fat people. Okay? That's absolutely stupid. Okay? And you're an idiot for thinking that it's somehow related to what we like. Okay? I memean, yeah, it could introduce us to new things. I mean, I learned about the concept of tentacle porn by watching some news sense of media. I mean, that's actually kind of a bad example because I don't like tentacle porn myself. But some people do. You know, and they wouldn't have imagined that on their own. They would have had to have gotten it from somewhere. So the introducing of ideas, I guess, could be a valid point. But you're not making that argument. You're talking about fat people. That's not the same thing. We're surrounded by fat people all the time, whether there's media involved with our thinking or not. It has nothing to do with media, and you know that.
If you find someone attractive and really enjoy spending time with them, there's no reason why their weight should be a factor.
Okay, you're saying if you're attracted to someone. So let's play with the word if for a little bit. If someone is fat enough to where I interpret that as being disgusting, repulsive, not something I can get a boner over, and not something I want to be around, then guess what? I don't find them attractive. Based off of your silly, dumb little logic here, I have no reason to date them because they're not attractive at all. You know, and like I said, I'm okay with thick girls. But fat is a completely different thing. I'm not going to hump a whale.
Especially since we know that the relationship between weight and health is extremely complex, and you really can't make any moral judgments on a person based on their weight.
That is one big pile of shit.
If you date someone that you just met, you may not see exactly how their weight is going to affect the way that they live. But if you know this individual, you'll see these things. You'll see whether or not they can even breathe. That is an issue with a lot of obese people, is the ability to breathe. Because it's a health problem. Diabetes is a good possibility with these people. It's proven. Granted, not everyone who's obese has that exact problem, but it is common, as are certain types of cancer. You know, there are issues. Plus, who's to say that their heaviness isn't going to affect their lifestyle? They're probably not going to be very active. I mean, that does show with a lot of big people. I do know a couple of exceptions, I will admit, but knowing as many fat people as I do, going over to as many of their houses as I have, I can definitely tell you almost every single one of them lives like a fucking slob. Okay? This is not just coming from media influence. Okay? I'm not an idiot. Okay? I'm basing this off of what I have actually seen, what I have experienced, and what I have read from medical journals. It is commonplace that if you're fat enough, you will be lazy. You will have health issues. And I do not want to date someone with those issues. Okay? To be entirely honest, I already have. And I have learned from that experience that what I have heard is true. At least true enough to where it is an issue for me. Now, of course, there are the possibilities of an exception. So I would keep an open mind about that. But the idea of dating someone who's fat isn't really that high. And now that I think about it, didn't you skip dating black people? What happened to that one?
Would you date someone who's black?
Yeah, you remember that? You mentioned black people in this video, but nowhere else. You just went from trans, completely skipped black, and went straight to fat. I mean, What's up with that, the Dennis? Aren't you trying to be inclusive? So why even mention this if you're not going to talk about it? I mean, I seriously doubt that you hate black people, but completely doing that kind of makes me wonder. I mean, do you have an answer to that? But you know what? Seeing as how I doubt you're going to respond to my specific video, let's just go ahead and go on to what you were talking about, which is the disabled.
Disabilities come in a very wide range, from being deaf to being in a wheelchair to only having one arm.
Really? Really? Really?
So aside from laughing at the dentist for this really obvious comment, I kind of giggle a little bit as well because the last thing that's on this brief little list actually relates to an example of how I know that what Dennis is saying is obviously true. Back when I was in high school, I was on the wrestling team, and we would obviously face off against our division opponents twice a year at the very least. There would be the regular meetups as well as the first round of championship tournaments. And on the team that was, at the time, our top rival, there was a gal who was just breathtakingly gorgeous. I mean, my God, was she smoking hot. And she only had one arm. But she was a stat girl. And so, along with checking her out because of her being, like I said, drop-dead gorgeous, she also did a job that, for a lot of people, you would have to use both arms to do. Use one to keep the paper steady and the other one to keep stats. Well, she was able to do the job just fine with one arm. So, I know from just that one simple example that this is true. Plus, here on YouTube, one of the people who I follow is a cripple by the name of Liberal Lunacy. Some of us have probably seen her work before. I think she's gorgeous. And yeah, part of it is because of those massive tits. I mean, look at those things. But part of it also is her face. I think she has a strong but still very feminine face. I love her hair. And I also love the content of what she says. I mean, again, look at the image and look at what she's fucking doing. Of course, I am going to like what I see in this regard.
And I think it's pretty ridiculous to say that you couldn't be attracted to any person who has any of those disabilities.
I actually agree with that small little bit of what was just said, but listen to what's said immediately afterwards.
Disabilities can happen to anyone. Someone you're extremely attracted to today could become disabled tomorrow, and that shouldn't make your attraction to them disappear. Though if it does, it might not be because of them, but rather because you have some preconceived ideas about disabled people that are just inaccurate and harmful.
Okay, so now you're painting a completely different picture than what things sounded like they were going at when you first brought up the disabled section. You're making it sound like instead of dating someone who is like Liberal Lunacy, who is wheelchair bound, starting off with a relationship like that, versus dating someone who isn't crippled or disabled, like Tessa Fowler here, to my knowledge, and then later on down the road, something happens to where she becomes disabled. That's kind of making this discussion a little bit more confusing than it needs to be. So let's go ahead and play with your scenario that you've just proposed. Now, again, with what dating means to me being a pursuit for a possible lifelong partner, not only am I going to be dating someone who I find physically attractive, but someone who I do share a lot of compatibility with and have a lot of strong feelings for. So, with that being said, the whole test of love shit, how long have we been dating? I mean, has it just started, or has it been a very long, ongoing thing? How serious is the relationship? And let's throw in another situation. Am I ready to pop the big question to her? Do I want to take that plunge? Or maybe we're at a part in the relationship where I have already asked. Have I already asked? Did she say yes? I mean, that's kind of an important thing to consider as well. Are we actually engaged? And even more importantly, are we already married? That's going to make a really big impact on how I'm going to answer your question. Now, if we ask questions about the incident that led to said disability, obviously I've got to ask the question of, what the fuck happened? Why is she disabled now? I mean, what changed her life? I mean, you're the one who brought up the concept of physical attraction, so for the sake of addressing this topic, it matters. Because You're the one who's bringing it up. Okay? I mean, did they lose a limb? I mean, no more arm or something? I mean, that's got to be a focal point. What about skin damage? Okay? Because that can seriously make a big impact overall with physical attraction. But see, here's the thing. Physical attraction is completely irrelevant when it comes to the value of love. How much love is actually there? Do I actually love said individual, or am I in it just for something to bang? I don't think you completely understand that concept, the Dennis. So I think you really need to do some soul searching and figure out what the fuck you're trying to focus on.
Unsurprisingly, this is another case of the media telling you that a certain group isn't attractive. Disabled people are rarely romantic leads. Their stories in movies and TV shows are often tragic, but that doesn't reflect the reality that disabled people can be happy and have dating lives and be attractive. Now,
That is one big pile of shit.
that doesn't reflect the reality that disabled people can be happy and have dating lives and be attractive. Now,
And nobody is saying that they can't. Just because they're not a primary focal point in various forms of media, that doesn't mean jack shit when it comes to reality.
Now, if you're not attracted to someone, you're not attracted to them. I'm not going to tell you that you have to be attracted to this fat person or that trans person or that disabled person. But the more you work at unlearning your own prejudices, the more you'll be able to see people from these groups as people rather than tired stereotypes.
That's dumb. Stop it.
Unlearning our own biases doesn't happen overnight, and I don't have a step-by-step instruction guide for you. But I think if you can accept that these prejudices exist in all of us, even you can identify them when they come up and work to change how you think about them. It will most likely be a long, slow process, but I think it's worth it. Because these dating preferences are ultimately harmful to people who don't fit into your box of what a conventionally attractive person looks like. It makes people feel isolated, alone, and unwanted to hear that they're universally unattractive to people. I don't think there's anyone out there who somebody doesn't find attractive. We're sold this image of the conventionally attractive person, but in reality, all kinds of people around the world are constantly dating, having sex, finding people attractive, getting married. It's not only the conventionally attractive who find love or have sex. So by working on ourselves to dispel that idea, we can make the world a more welcoming and loving place for everybody, no matter how they look. This